Do you like art galleries? How about scary art galleries? That's exactly what we're dealing with in Eve, where you play as a girl named Eve, and you're tasked with exploring a creepy gallery. And that's it. Okay, no. There's actually way more to it than that. A lot more, actually. Today we're going to dive into the world of art. We'll uncover the story of Ebe, the cursed gallery, and by the end, we'll explore the hidden lore and symbolism that tie everything together. Remember, no running in the halls, absolutely no lighters, and no leaving. Ever. One day, Eve's parents decide to take her on a trip to an art gallery. Specifically, an exhibit showcasing the works of an artist known as Gortena, Weiss Gortena, to be exact. Upon entering the exhibit, her parents check out the front desk, while Eve wanders off on her own. The place is quite large, filled with many paintings and sculptures, all of Gortena's life's work. Before we jump too far into the gallery itself, let's talk a bit more about our main character. Eve is a very quiet girl. She doesn't really talk much. It's unclear if she's shy, or if she just isn't much of a talker. At the start of the game, her mother mentions something about a handkerchief, one Eve got for her birthday. That's really all we know about our mostly silent protagonist, but maybe that handkerchief will come in handy later. Anyway, we can talk to NPCs and examine the art as we peruse the gallery. There's quite a lot of work, ranging from paintings to what seem like mannequins, large sculptures, and even a massive painting on the floor, depicting a giant anglerfish deep in the ocean. It's pretty much exactly what you'd expect an art exhibit to be like, but for some reason, Gortena's art has a certain creepy feeling to it. Some are abstract, some realistic, but they all share this uncanny quality, almost like they could come to life at any moment. Upon exploring further, we come across a huge painting hung up some stairs in a solitary room. It looks quite different from the rest. While the others have a more refined touch, this one seems to be drawn in crayon? Bright colors fill the canvas. A dripping black and gray mass forms a road down the center, and eerie black hands reach from the sides. Abstract paintings can get funky, but this one really doesn't feel right. After examining the painting, the music in the gallery stops, and the area grows eerily quiet. Heading downstairs, we notice that there's no one left in the gallery but us. It's as if time has stopped. Suddenly, we're the only ones here. What's going on? We return to the entrance, and the lights flicker off. Like everyone else, our parents are gone. It's pitch black outside, despite being the middle of the afternoon just moments ago, and a red liquid begins to ooze down the window. Some of the paintings come to life, and shadows dance across the windowsills. And then, we head back to the room upstairs. With only one place left to go, we follow the footsteps leading toward the painting of the anglerfish. We step inside and descend into the cursed gallery. Welcome to the cursed gallery, a far cry from the regular exhibit above, and the place where most of our adventure takes place. Ebe lands between two pieces, one filled with a strange blue fluid, and the other a deep red. Upon exploring a bit, we find a red rose sitting in a vase, and we take it with us. Who knows, it could be important later. We also notice writing on the walls, beckoning us forward, so of course, we just have to head inside. Once inside, we find a fairly empty room with a painting of a woman whose hair is leaking out of the frame. There is no name for this piece, but if you're familiar with Japanese horror movies, you've most likely seen this trope before. The Yurei-style ghost, a creepy ghost girl with long, usually black, unkempt hair, symbolizing death and decay. Think Sadako from The Ring, or Koyako from The Grudge. As for the painting itself, it has no title. Eve simply points to the hair flowing out of the frame. After taking the key, writing appears on the wall, repeating the word thief over and over. It's as if the gallery itself is alive, not just the paintings. From here, we enter a green room covered in paintings of bugs. You'll notice this entire game has a heavy focus on color. We'll get more into that in the final portions of the video, but if I may, I'd like you to pay attention not just to the rooms and the characters, but to the colors of everything as we go, since they play a major role in the game's narrative and symbolism. This is also where we encounter our first few hostile entities, shadowy hands that try to grab us through the walls, and a headless statue. The next area actually reminds me of the cat in the tree stump house from Amori's dream world. They're even the same color. I wonder if Amori might have drawn inspiration from this. Either way, this is how exploration in the Cursed Gallery works. Walk around to find clues, solve puzzles using those clues, and avoid Guartena's malevolent creations. There's a room in the yellow area where you have to find a stick figure hiding behind different curtains, and pulling the wrong one results in a penalty. One penalty in particular stands out, the one that turns off the music. While it's just a small gag to make the atmosphere creepier, I have to wonder, does the fact that the painting can turn off the music suggest that the gallery's music is actually playing in universe, and that Eve can hear it too? In the next area, we find a weird painting with a waggling tongue, lips on the wall, and hanging dolls. We have to feed the pair of lips some food, and after solving a rather gruesome puzzle, we feed the mouth and are allowed entry to the next part of the gallery. Well, hopefully not getting sliced in half by a guillotine. In the red area, we're met with a very peculiar painting titled Soul-Sapping Throng. It depicts dark, shadowy figures gathered around a tree with blue leaves, draining its life. Earlier, we picked a blue fruit from a tree in a previous room, and used it to feed the mouth on the wall. Perhaps that's related somehow? In the next room, we see a painting of a peacock feather. I think the reason a peacock was chosen is pretty obvious. The pattern on its feathers look like an eye. The painting is even called Pattern. Most of the pieces in this room seem to follow a similar theme. The statues clutch their chests, hearts appear in almost every painting, and there's even one that's a literal heartbeat. On the far right, there is a painting of a woman adorned in red, which, of course, comes to life when you interact with it and tries to kill you. Lovely. Just beyond that room was a small library filled with books, one of which tells a very happy and totally not creepy story about a little girl who swallows a key and then, opens herself up to get it. That's the same key we use for this room, and I have to admit, that's pretty creative. It's still creepy, though. One book also mentions how the women within the Cursed Gallery chase any human who enters. I haven't brought this up until now, but the Cursed Gallery doesn't just appear for Eve. Others have entered before her, and presumably fallen victim to it. As we continue exploring, we find more art pieces, another murderous painting woman, and some blue petals scattered on the floor. Who could those belong to? That would be him. Gary. He's knocked out cold. We put two and two together, we can assume those scattered blue petals came from his blue rose, meaning he was probably attacked by that same painting woman. Gary is a kind young man who serves as our deuteragonist. Hey, might be stuck in this hellhole, but at least we're not alone. He's rather skittish and gets scared easily, meaning this is probably the worst possible place for him. But honestly, if most people were stuck in a place like this, they'd be freaked out too, including me. After pairing up with Gary, we also learn why we couldn't read the painting descriptions earlier in the game. Since Eve is so young, she doesn't understand some of the words. Adorable. Nice touch. Talk about bleak. Next is the gray area, where we're greeted by the grieving wife and grieving husband paintings, along with a pair of shadowy hands reaching up from the floor. As you might guess, the goal of this area is to find the missing wedding ring for the bride. There are strange eyes ebbed in the floor, a creepy blue painting you definitely should not give your rose to, and a room with eye drops, surrounded by paintings of eye drops. Weird taste there, Gortana. And after solving a few puzzles, we find ourselves in a room with 4 strange sculptures. Melancholy, wine sofa, very apt description there, puzzle, and feeling. They all seem kind of random to be grouped together. Previous rooms' work shared a clear theme, but these just feel oddly disconnected. The best I can come up with is that they represent a person, their skeletal structure, and their emotional state. Not sure how the sofa fits into all that though. Maybe it's because they're drunk? I don't know. Notably, when taking a closer look at it, feeling seems to be a person. Sort of. You can see what looks like a tongue, feet, hands, and some facial features. Honestly, it feels like a mix of a bunch of people. Gross. Speaking of gross, I hope you're fine with mannequins, specifically mannequin heads, because, oh boy, there's a lot of them. There's also this weird mime-looking guy painted on the wall, and his expression changes the further you progress through the room. The paintings, as it turns out, are actually of the mannequins themselves, which I honestly didn't realize my first time playing. Mannequins are a pretty common horror trope. They provoke a kind of uncanny valley feeling, almost human, but not quite. There's a certain emotion this whole place evokes, this gray area, and it's a feeling of hopelessness, maybe even despair. Perhaps that's the point. White and black can both be considered the absence of color, but gray can be as well. Ever heard expressions like, "My world is gray without you," or "Without you everything feels dull and colorless"? That's the sort of vibe I get from this place. Meanwhile, the red borders around the paintings give off a feeling of danger. Obviously, the weird heads on the floor and the shifting expressions add to that same unease, but I guess it goes to show that even the way you frame something can affect its meaning. Exiting the hallway brings us to this large room, one of the largest so far. There are plenty of repeating paintings and mannequins, which doesn't bode well considering what they've done before, but at least they aren't moving. For now. Unlike the rest of the paintings featuring a brown-haired woman, there's one with white hair that really stands out from the rest. Out of all the sculptures so far, save maybe the blue one from the regular gallery, this one is especially creepy. Kinda reminds me of the, and I am going to butcher this, Shakusama. I'm just gonna put it on screen. I'm not even gonna try, bro. But with thin, unsettling black appendages. I can't imagine what sort of symbolism this would hold, besides being pure nightmare fuel. Speaking of nightmare fuel, there's an empty room with a solitary mirror at the end of it. It actually reminds me of the room where Eve found her very first key at the start of the game. Stare into it long enough, and one of the mannequin heads appears behind Gary. He tries to kick it, but we should probably stop him from doing that. If everything is alive in here, we wouldn't want to anger the spirits of this place any more than we already have. The rest of the area involves solving more puzzles until eventually we enter a room with a sofa and a painting of Eve's parents. The name of the couch art piece is Reserved Seat. Considering we find the family portrait in the same room, the implications here are not good. Upon attempting to exit, the two find the door locked, and banging can be heard from outside. Some of the art pieces begin breaking through and entering the room. The whole area descends into chaos, with that white-haired portrait from before now chasing you down. She's much more aggressive and much faster than the others. The two barely manage to escape. A ticking clock can be heard, with numbers sprawled across the floor. If you thought there were a lot of mannequin heads before, well, there are plenty more in here. Wherever this is. Eyes watch you. The women in the paintings laugh as you walk by, all while you chase after the shadowy apparitions of your parents, until, eventually... place like this would be a lot for anyone, but for a young girl like Eve, it's clear this is taking a huge toll on her. Thankfully, at the very least, we've got big bro Gary to comfort us. What a guy. He even gives us a piece of candy to cheer us up. We can take a rest here for a while and talk with Gary. There's a painting on the wall of this room called Untitled. It's unclear if that's actually its name or if it was literally left untitled. It's impossible to make out what it depicts exactly, but to me it kind of looks like a magic wand with sparkles around it. Not sure though. Next to the save point, there's a poster listing the rules of the gallery. It reads, no loud conversation, no photography, no food or drink, no fountain pens, no leaving, ever. And if you check it again, no leaving ever is replaced with no running in the building. After spending some time with our pal Gary, we arrive in the violet area. We eventually find this painting called Separation. Gotta agree with Gary on this one, it's definitely off-putting, that's for sure. Red is a very intense color, and when you pair it with the rough tone of black, if done right, it can make any painting unsettling. Could this painting be alluding to something that happens later? The lights suddenly go out, and Gary decides to use his lighter to brighten up the room again. Yeah, probably not the best idea. What's written on the floor is really just a warning, but again, like the painting, it's written in that creepy shade of red. We've come across so many entities in this place already, but again, it really feels like this entire gallery is alive. That's not a good sign. Guess we have no choice but to follow. This girl is Mary, our second and final companion. She's also trapped in the gallery, trying to find a way out. She's a kind and innocent girl, much like Ebe, though not quite as quiet. Mary carries a yellow rose to match Ebe's red and Gary's blue, forming the three primary colors. Very fitting, considering she's a tritagonist of the game. Interestingly, Mary mentions that, unlike Ebe and Gary, she hasn't been attacked by any of the artwork up until now. Considering what a death trap this place is, she must have gotten incredibly lucky. There's a completely empty painting here titled Flower of Jealousy. Strange. You'd think the untitled painting from earlier would have fit here instead. Anyway, you like bunnies? Hope so, because the next room is chock full of them. There's not much for us to do here right now, though there is a book titled Ruins of the Heart, which alludes to the game's different endings, something we'll get into near the end of the story section. Anyway, upon exiting, we return to the empty painting again, except this time, it's, not so empty. Its vines spring out. Thankfully, no one's hurt, but it does separate the group. Ebe is now with Mary, and Gary is trapped by himself. The next section of the game has you controlling both parties separately in order to solve puzzles. Ebe and Mary above, Gary below. Not much to note in the next room, except for the fact that Mary finds a knife. At least we won't be defenseless now. Right? Earlier on, Gary was disturbed by the bunny room, and it's plain to see why. From Ebe's point of view, the room was filled with a bunch of cute rabbits, but Gary could see what they really were. Demented blue dolls with beady red eyes. Moving the bookshelf aside allows us to progress. Back to Ebe and Mary, this is probably one of my favorite rooms in the entire gallery. It reminds me of the observatory from Luigi's Mansion. To create the illusion of stars and astral bodies, jewelry is hung up along the wall. It's a clever trick, and really goes to show that sometimes less is more. Mary then asks us if you could only leave with one of them, who would you pick? Probably best to not answer that one directly. Over on Gary's side, he discovers a book detailing some of Gortena's works. And the very last one is Mary's. As it turns out, Mary is not who we thought she was. She's Gortena's final creation, just like the other living paintings and sculptures scattered throughout this cursed gallery. And right now, Ebe is alone with her. The ear painting catches word of this. Turns out it's connected to the mouth above, and probably to the eye on the left too. The way the eye is positioned, was it pointing us toward this the whole time? The mouth begins telling Mary everything Gary just discovered. It's a shattering revelation for her, and understandably so. To learn that you aren't real would be devastating for anyone. Her expression goes blank, and her world collapses around her. If there was an innocent girl there before, she is gone now. She runs off in a fit of madness, and we soon find her back in the starry room, stabbing a bleeding mannequin head. We should, probably leave. She follows Eve with a slow, eerie gait, and when you talk to her, it's clear something isn't quite right. In one particularly chilling line, she talks about the game Loves Me Not. You know, the one with the flower petals. She mentions that there's a way to always end on loves you. That is, if you pluck the final petal and end on the stem. Might want to keep a tight grip on your rose, Eve. The rest of the area that follows is fairly calm for the most part. You know, aside from the whole Rogue Mary thing. Meanwhile, Gary's stuck in his own personal nightmare. He walks down a narrow hallway as one of the dolls keeps appearing in front of him, beckoning him to take it. Best to probably ignore that. It's interesting, though. The dolls are blue, matching Gary's rose. But Mary did say that blue was one of her favorite colors, so it makes sense her dolls would share that hue. Unfortunately, this isn't the end of the doll's torment. After collecting most of the paintballs needed to solve a puzzle, Gary enters the central room, only for the door to lock behind him. If he doesn't find the key in time, the massive doll in the painting will attack. It's surprisingly easy to fail here too, since the key's placement seems almost random. Thankfully, we manage to escape. Looks like the jig is up. Gary tells Eve the truth about Mary, and the two move on into a strange new section of the gallery. A place unlike anything we've seen before. Welcome to the sketchbook, one of the deepest parts of the cursed gallery. As you can see, the entire area looks like, well, the inside of an actual sketchbook. Everything from the roads to the animals to the water is drawn in crayon. Gary even mentions that the whole place smells like it. This area is especially creepy. The childlike visuals mixed with the off-putting music and that endless black background. You'd expect a child's sketchbook to feel bright and carefree, but this place feels anything but. I can't help but feel a sense of urgency here, like, I really need to get out of here. The entire area is divided into 9 sections, with 5 main points of interest. When Eve and Gary check out the pink house, we see that Mary is searching for us. You know, maybe that's why I had that sense of urgency. The goal of this area is to reach the toy box to find a key. I can't help but wonder if this sketchbook once belonged to Guertena when he was younger. Maybe he based this section of the fabricated world on his childhood drawings. Or perhaps it's tied to Mary somehow. Did he make this place just for Mary? For now, we have a toy box to check out. Or, I guess, get pushed into. Inside, we can see a lot of Guertena's creations scattered across the floor, all drawn in crayon. From the mannequin head to the little green painting we walked across earlier. Even that weird little cat guy. After finding our rose, the key, and Gary, the room dims to an eerie blue, and the air turns cold. The same thing that happened when Gary was trapped in the doll room. Everything in the room comes to life, and the two are forced to run out. We come to a dark hallway with a heavy, dreary atmosphere. The walls are covered with yellow flowers, drawn in crayon. Could this be where Mary came from? Using Gary's lighter, we burn our way into the attic, only to be met by Mary once again. Here we're given a choice: remove the painting, rip it, or burn it. Setting it on fire burns not just the frame, but the creation within. Even though she was separated from her painting, it seems she was still connected to it somehow. She's reduced to nothing but ashes. I really wish there could have been another outcome for Mary. It truly seemed like all she wanted was a friend. She just wanted to escape this world and live a real life of her own. But that simply wasn't possible for her. She was doomed from the start. How tragic. Afterward, Gary, injured from the broken glass, receives Eve's handkerchief to help stop the bleeding. There's only one place left to go. If Mary was Guartena's final creation, and we found her frame, the logical conclusion is that we're nearing the end of the exhibit, and indeed we are. Descending one last set of foreboding stairs in a pitch-black room, we arrive at the very last painting of the exhibit. It's a painting of the art gallery itself, strangely enough. The opposite of the fabricated world painting from the top floor. Who knew this was really a window the whole time? Suddenly, and surprisingly, Eve's mother appears. She seems relieved to have finally found her daughter, and pleads for her to come with her. Meanwhile, Gary calls to her from beyond the painting. They only have a brief moment to escape, as the frame will soon disappear. Ebe decides to follow Gary, which, thankfully, finally takes her out of the cursed gallery and back into reality. Back in the real world, Ebe finds herself standing next to the painting of the fabricated world. She can't recall what she was doing. She seems to have forgotten everything that took place. The cursed gallery, Mary, though maybe that's for the best, and even Gary. She wanders through the gallery, perusing some of the art, until she finds Gary again, standing beside a sculpture of a red rose. The statue's name is Embodiment of Spirit, and he mentions that it makes him feel deeply sorrowful. He doesn't know why. He asks for the girl's name. I suppose at this point, Ebe must have remembered what they went through together. It isn't until Gary pulls out her handkerchief from his pocket that he realizes who she is, and recalls everything. Eventually, the two say their goodbyes, but not before Gary assures her that they'll meet again. He promises to thoroughly clean the handkerchief Ebe lent him before returning it, and the two go their separate ways. Now, hold on, there's actually one last section of the gallery, an optional area. Honestly, it doesn't add much to the main story, but it might help us understand Guartena a bit more, and it does include some neat set pieces. Interestingly, the entrance to this area is almost exactly like the place where you find Gary's rose. When heading down the stairs to enter, Gary even mentions that he feels like he's been down these stairs before. Welcome to the dungeon. It consists of two areas, the orange area and the cyan area. Rather than going over every puzzle and section here, I want to bring your attention to three very specific pieces of art, namely Final Stage, Tryst After Death, and the Self-Portrait. Final Stage is very similar to the reserved seat sculpture. If Ebe chooses to fall asleep on the bed, she'll recall a dream of her 9th birthday, which actually leads to a bad ending. It's the only room in the black area. Black can be considered the color of doom. For the longest time, it was believed that Guertena never made self-portraits, but the final puzzle of the game has you recovering tiles that reveal him. It's no face reveal, but we at least get to see part of his body, an over-the-shoulder view of him painting. Lastly, we have Tryst after death. I'm not going to say much about this one for now, but I really needed to keep these three pieces in mind. As I mentioned earlier, Ebe has multiple endings depending on your choices throughout the adventure. So, before heading into the theory and speculation section, let's go over all of them. The game uses a secret point system that determines which ending you get. These points shift depending on your actions, things like kicking the doll in the hallway, or your dialogue choices with Gary. If Ebe doesn't give Gary her handkerchief in the sketchbook before the two exit the fabricated world, he won't remember her when they meet again in the real gallery. If Ebe chooses to go with her mother at the end of the game, if Gary dies during the playthrough and she goes with him, if she steps away on her own, or if she chooses to sleep on the bed in the final dungeon, the ending Ebe All Alone will play. It's exactly as it sounds. Ebe, all alone in the gallery, left to wander forever. Needless to say, the bed is a trap, and both the mother and Gary she meets in this ending were, well, fakes. At the start of the game, we see Gary examining the Hanged Man portrait. If Gary dies within the cursed gallery, he replaces the figure in that very painting. Its name changes to Forgotten Portrait. Left and forgotten. What a terribly haunting fate for someone who tried so hard to protect her. If you leave the painting world with Mary instead of Gary, you'll get this ending. In this version of events, Mary finds Ebe's rose before she does. Gary confronts her, trading his rose for Ebe's to save her. Remember the loves me not game Mary mentioned she loved playing? Quite sadistically, she does that with Gary's rose, killing him in the process. Upon exiting the gallery, you find that Mary has become your sister, having exchanged existences with Gary. She even takes the candy Gary once gave you. A chillingly bittersweet conclusion. She finally got her wish, to live in the real world. This ending is when everything falls apart. After going insane in the doll room, Gary begins talking to himself. If Ebe can't snap him out of it, he continues to hallucinate. Ebe, heartbroken, can't bring herself to leave him behind. She chooses to stay with him. Mary tries to convince Ebe to come with her, but Ebe refuses, telling her to go on ahead. It's heartbreaking to see. Ebe sitting right across from Gary, trying to comfort him, yet he doesn't even realize she's there. So close, yet so far. If you have enough bond points with Mary, she returns, saying she can't leave Ebe behind, despite always wanting to escape the gallery. She says she'll always stay with them, and throws a welcome party. If you look closely, though, you'll notice both Ebe and Gary are dead. Their flowers have been torn apart by the two women in the paintings. The last ending was pretty rough, but at least Mary found some semblance of happiness, if you can call it that. In this ending, though, no one is happy, making it the worst outcome of them all. It begins much like the previous ending, but if Ebe doesn't have enough bond points with Mary, she won't return. Instead, Mary tries to leave the gallery on her own. This doesn't end well. She quickly realizes she can't escape. She's still trapped inside the cursed gallery, but this time, she's completely alone. Her dolls, the paintings, the entities that once surrounded her, all gone. She runs through the empty halls, calling out for Ebe, for Gary, for her father, but no one answers. There's no one left. Just her, lost and forever alone in the dark. So, what's going on with any of that? The paintings, Mary, the gallery itself? Who the hell is Guertena? Don't worry, I know there are a lot of questions, and to be upfront, we don't have every single answer, but after looking into everything, I think there may be a way to piece it all together. Let's start with the gallery itself. As I've mentioned before, it's clear that the gallery is alive somehow. Whether it's the spirit of Guertena inhabiting it, a separate cursed force that gave it life, or something else entirely, we can't say for sure. What I think is most likely, though, is that Guertena himself brought his paintings and the gallery to life by his own will somehow. It's clear that painting and sculpting, the art of creating, was Guertena's entire life, if not one of his major focuses. It was his legacy, his obsession, his passion. He must have dedicated years, decades to his life's work. Even his self-portrait, the one hidden deep in the dungeon, shows him painting from behind. His face isn't included, not out of anonymity, but perhaps because he didn't find it important. That's not what mattered to him. His art is what matters. To Guertena, his art was his life, his feelings, his emotions, his experiences, his pain, everything he wanted to leave behind. All of it poured into his art, what he wishes to bestow upon the world, his creations. And indeed, if his life is his art, then it only makes sense that the final piece in his gallery would symbolize his own deathbed, the end of both the artist and his art. For a man like Guertena, there is no clearer way to immortalize himself than through his gallery becoming his resting place. At the start of the video, I asked you to pay close attention to the colors representing each area. Color theory, the study of how colors affect perception, emotion, and thought, plays a huge role here. Since Guertena was an artist, it makes perfect sense that he'd use color itself as a language. If Guertena wanted to communicate with us, wouldn't he do it through his paintings, through his works? I believe the gallery is arranged deliberately, to speak to us without words, to communicate to us without even speaking. And it could be the developer's way of speaking to us as well. The Cursed Gallery starts you off in a blue area, while Gary begins in a red one. Behind Ebe, we see a set of blue and red paintings, perhaps alluding to the fact that these two's fates are already intertwined. In color theory, blue symbolizes calmness, trust, and stability, but it can also carry feelings of sadness and coldness. It's a color tied to imagination, depth, and sensitivity. Right away, I think of two things. First, Gary. He's Ebe's trustworthy partner, the one person she can truly rely on. It's as if the game is telling you, even before you meet him, to trust Gary. Trust the color blue. Fittingly, the blue area is also the only section without any enemies. Second, I think of the gallery itself. Its immense depth mirrors the vast imagination of Guertena, the host and creator of this world. It's almost as if he's saying, "Come, step into my mind, my world." Now we have red, a very attention-grabbing color. It's associated with love, passion, and excitement, but also blood, life, and violence. Recall that room filled with heart-themed paintings and sculptures? That was part of the red area, which ties perfectly into the theme of love. For Ebe and her red rose, the color could symbolize innocence meeting danger, her vulnerability. She's also a character who feels deeply, despite her quiet demeanor. She stays behind to comfort Gary when he's hallucinating in the doll room. And as for Mary, well, she sets her on fire. Beyond symbolism, red could literally represent life itself. Ebe is one of the few truly living beings in the gallery, the only one carrying real blood. I mentioned earlier that in Mary's bad ending, she's trapped in the gallery forever. From what we learn in the attic, for an entity from within a painting to leave, it must take the rose, and therefore the life, of a living person. That's why Mary could escape with Gary's rose, but was trapped when she left both behind. Mary is false, Ebe is real, so her rose is red, like blood. Red can also represent courage and the will to survive. Not confidence, but the raw determination to move forward despite fear. It fits her perfectly. And as her caretaker in all of this, It makes sense for Gary to meet her within the red area. He clearly loves and cares for the kid, even sacrificing his life if it means she can go free. After the blue area, we enter green. This is the room filled with ants and paintings of bugs. Naturally, green is associated with nature, but green also carries connotations of envy and jealousy. Maybe our little ant friend is jealous, seeing all the other bugs with their own paintings, while his is nowhere to be found. It's a bit of low-hanging fruit. Green, nature, bugs. But that could very well be the developer's way of subtly saying, hey, the room's colors mean something, so pay attention. If you recall, earlier in the video, I specifically asked you to pay attention to the colors while we covered the green room. So if this was indeed the dev's intention, that's kind of meta, isn't it? Yellow represents happiness, joy, optimism, and sunlight. It's not just the yellow area we have to talk about, it's Mary too. She starts out cheerful and full of life, even optimistic, but when she learns the truth, that brightness flips completely. Yellow is also the color of caution and danger. Thanks to its high visibility, it's literally the color of warning signs. I feel like I shouldn't even have to explain why that fits for Mary. It's as though the game was trying to warn us about her from the start. Some of the first real puzzles show up in the yellow area, and they start to get more complex, almost like a subtle nod toward the danger ahead. There's even a storage room in the yellow section, just like the one in the brown area where Mary later finds her knife. You find the shoe for the step stool inside the same type of box. It's as if the game was showing us what was going to happen, that, just like you, a girl would find something in a box, only to try to use it on you later. Too much exposure to yellow is said to cause anxiety. Honestly, that's exactly how most of us felt after seeing Mary completely lose it, and realizing we were now trapped with her. Interestingly, yellow pigments were among the first ever used in art, found even in ancient cave paintings. It's a wild thought, but maybe that hints at Mary being Guertena's core inspiration in some way? Perhaps the child he never had, or the embodiment of a relationship that failed. I originally thought that the love-themed paintings and sculptures in the red area hinted at a tragic story between Guertena and a woman he once loved. Perhaps someone who fell for another man, or perhaps she was distant and closed off in their relationship. But it could just as easily be taken another way, that these women, plural, never truly loved him at all. Maybe they only desired his wealth, not his heart. This interpretation actually lines up with a book found in the gallery, Collected Works of Guertena. When reading the entry for the brown-haired woman, it says, "It was said that he based this on a lover he had at the time, but he has denied this claim. In truth, Guertena based it around the haughty women who attempted to court him for his inheritance." With that in mind, the statues in the red area might be more than decorative. They could be guardians of his heart. Fittingly, they both reference the paired Buddhist guardian statues known as A and Un, or which symbolize the beginning and end of all things. Maybe they stand watch, protecting Guertena's heart from those who sought to take advantage of him. Even the peacock feathers fit that theme. They're beautiful on the surface, yet they watch. Symbols of vanity and hidden greed. It's as if Guertena saw through the false charm of those who surrounded him, and turned that bitterness into art. And circling back to yellow for a moment, it can also represent jealousy, which ties perfectly to Mary. Jealous of Ebe and Gary, and the lives they have that she never will. The gray area. I mentioned before that this place feels devoid of life, and indeed, gray often conveys emotions like depression, sadness, monotony, and lifelessness. Lifeless couldn't be more fitting here, since this is where we first encounter the mannequins. They perfectly embody that sense of emptiness, forms that look human yet have no soul, no warmth, no real existence. Maybe they're meant to remind us that nothing here is truly alive, not even Mary. The entities bleed and move, sure, but they aren't any more alive than the chairs and tables scattered throughout the gallery. This entire gray area captures this concept flawlessly, and the mannequins are the perfect symbol of it. Even the first paintings you see, the grieving bride and the grieving groom, evoke sorrow, like a couple mourning on a rainy wedding day, a haunting reflection of love and despair, drained of color. Gray can also be associated with class and elegance, which fits nicely with the sculpture obsessed with gold, dressed in a fancy manner and serving as a centerpiece of the area's main puzzle. He's a distorted image of wealth and refinement in a world stripped of vitality. And fittingly, this is where Eve has her nightmare. It ties directly into the monotony Gray represents, the same mannequin heads and paintings repeating endlessly, like a loop that refuses to end. That repetition is a recurring theme here, echoing throughout the duplicates, the copies, the endless cycle of imitation. Yet Gray also symbolizes stability and maturity. And just when it all seems too much, Gary comforts Eve after her nightmare, his presence a calm amidst the chaos. Violet, not far off from blue. Violet is the color of royalty and spirituality. Yeah, I feel like I shouldn't have to explain that one. Poor Gary. It's also tied to imagination, and fittingly, this is where Gary starts hallucinating. I'll point back to the Mary ending here, since it captures that dreamy, surreal energy perfectly. Interestingly, violet is also seen as a color of balance, a midpoint between the high energy of red and the calmness of blue. It's a perfect metaphor for their bond, the courage of Eve and the composed, gentle nature of Gary meeting in harmony. Well, usually composed. I've actually mentioned this before on the channel, way back in a Zelda video, funnily enough, but purple, and really the whole spectrum of it, is used a lot in Japanese horror. It often carries an unsettling, otherworldly vibe, so for one of the final areas in the game, yeah, that checks out. Over on the brown side, the color usually stands for reliability. Yeah, we're pretty much getting the opposite of that with Mary here, so I don't think that tracks. It can also symbolize loneliness, however, decay and isolation, and that fits a lot better. If Mary doesn't take either Eve or Gary's rose, she'll be stuck in this place forever, left to rot alone. I'd like to take this moment to talk about Mary a little more once again. It really feels like the gallery is trying to help her escape, or maybe in some way she has a bit of control over it herself. In the brown area, there is the Trapeze Act painting and a clown, with messages on the wall that read, "Come to a world with no grown-ups. I want to have fun with you, Eve. And you, me, and our friends." It doesn't feel like those are coming from the gallery. It feels like they're coming from Mary. Then we get to the dungeon, which features 3 colors: orange, cyan, and black. We mentioned black briefly earlier, but let's start with orange. Orange represents creativity and enthusiasm. Fitting, since some of Guartina's strangest works are found here, being the final area of the game and all. Spiritually, orange is seen as a sacred color, especially in Buddhism and Hinduism. It's often used in the robes of monks to symbolize enlightenment. Considering this is near the end of Guartina's gallery, perhaps this area is like peering into the deepest corners of his mind, the final stage of his creative and spiritual journey. Cyan is tranquility, water, and mental clarity, even focus and relaxation. As you solve more puzzles in this area, the water from the central painting begins to overflow, slowly engulfing the entire space. I saved this area and this sculpture for last for a reason. I'm going to bring up something that might seem random, but it'll make sense, so just hear me out. Earlier, I talked about Guartina's potential suitors, how they were after him for his wealth rather than his heart. Maybe that's true, but perhaps his heart did belong to someone. Not a person, but something. His art. Take Eggman from the Sonic series, for example. He has no biological child, but the closest thing he has is Sage. Though he has no romantic partner, his love for science and creation becomes his passion. His love, his romantic interest, in a sense. From that love is born Sage, his AI daughter. Sage is to Evo what Mary is to Guartina. His final creation, his greatest work, his daughter. The daughter he brought to life through his art. And like the rest of his works, despite her near perfection, she was never real. She could never be. As you progress to the Cyan area, like I said, the water continues to overflow, blurring the line between art and reality. In the sculpture itself, we see what appears to be Guartena, embraced by his own creation, a tryst after death, or perhaps life through death. A tryst, meaning a private romantic rendezvous. He lives on through his work, eternally bound to it. And just as the cursed gallery bleeds into the real world, his imagination manifests physically. Even the fake water of the sculpture pours out as though it were real, engulfing the floor beneath you. Are video games art? They can draw us in so deeply, it almost feels like the worlds are real. They aren't, but in a way they are. The emotions they stir, the lessons we take from them, the experiences we live through the lens of fiction. If any medium can do that, it's art. A creator breathes life into their work, whether what you bring into the world is light and life, or darkness and destruction, it's still art. To decide if something is art or not, it's not about how pretty the background looks or how sharp the writing is. The real question is, how does it touch the soul? Does it make you sad, angry, happy? Does it frighten you? If something can make us feel that deeply, so strongly that it feels almost real, then you'd be remiss to call it anything else. What did you learn? How did it make you feel? Did it make you think, reflect, or long for something you've lost? Did it give you nostalgia? All of these, no matter the medium, are proof of something powerful. A whole world within a canvas. Something you can live in and interact with. To leave a mark on the world. To live far beyond your own death. Yours may have been a twisted one, Guartena. But I think I understand now.